It's the first thing that ever happened to me in recruiting is, I spent weeks just making phone calls to candidates and without even knowing what I was doing. That was the entire job, was to get me over my fear of picking up the phone.
Optimize your business with a Workforce AI Edge powered by Vizier. Make smarter decisions and achieve better outcomes with real-time AI insights delivered to every people leader. Explore more at visier.com.
And what I see, especially with Gen Z recruiters coming in, is they think they can email and text their way out of recruiting. And you can, to a certain extent. I think you can get to average by being masterful at email and text. At some point, though, you have to be able to pick up the phone and have really good conversation, because there's very few jobs in the world somebody will accept a job without talking to a real person, without engaging with a real person, without feeling comfortable with a real person.
Welcome to Backstage Pass with the HR Rockstar, the show that pulls back the curtain and cranks up the volume on the most pressing HR topics, from talent strategies and workplace culture to career pivots and leadership. Because in today's world, HR isn't just behind the scenes, it's center stage. I'm your host, Jay Arnold, and in the world of HR and talent, there are times we recognize top performers within the workplace, sometimes referred to as rock stars. This podcast combines my love of HR as my career with my experience of 10 plus years performing shows around Michigan and the Midwest in my rock band, chasing the dream of being an actual rock star. Join me as I sit down with rock stars in their fields to have fun, insightful conversations that keep the human in human resources. Together we'll disrupt, innovate, and amplify the future of work. So grab your pass, turn it up, and let's make some noise. Welcome to Backstage Pass with the HR Rockstar, now part of the Work Defined Network. Joining me today is Tim Sackett, talent acquisition leader, author, and host of his own podcast, HR Famous. You may have seen Tim on stages across HR events nationally, where he shares his insights and best practices. Let's get into it. Hi, Tim. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Jay. This is going to be exciting.
Appreciate it. I've followed you for a number of years on LinkedIn and your own podcast, and really just dove into some of the content. Always had a chuckle at how you approach some things, and really, but you made humor and some practical tips on how to approach different areas of TA and how it really is a partner to the business and the clients you serve. So with that being said, let's dive right into some of the questions. You've written and spoken so much about, talent acquisition, and really inspired a number of professionals within TA and the HR community over the years, including myself. Again, for those that don't know you, and you are indeed a rock star in this space, whether you believe it or not. So take us back. I know a little bit of your story, but those listening that might not know who you are, what first drew you into the world of recruiting and HR in general?
God, the world of recruiting I was born into. Like, my mom actually started a staffing firm when I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and single mom. And so she would actually do screening calls at night, with my sister and I on the bed we'd watch TV with no sound on it. She was doing her interviews from literally, it seemed like every night was 6 to 9. I know it wasn't every night, but back then that's what staffing was, is you actually called people in the evenings, and she did it with 2 kids. Right. And so she would make dinner and we'd have dinner, and then we would, kind of do, either we would be playing and trying not to make too much noise, or be sitting on her bed doing that kind of thing. So it's interesting because most people fall into recruiting. And so I always tell people I was born into recruiting, getting to listen to that. So right out of college, my wife wanted to be a physical therapist. And so she applied to a bunch of physical therapy schools, ended up getting into a school in Michigan, and my mom's business was growing. So she's like, hey, you should come work for me. And so I did that, ended up getting my master's in HR, and wanted to try the corporate side of HR. And that was part of one of my accounts was General Motors. I became friends with one of the plant HR leaders and for GM. So I just thought, oh, that's the coolest job ever. I want to go be an HR leader. And so went and did that. It kept getting pulled back into recruiting, because it was I would be in an HR job, and then I'd be in some meeting and someone would be complaining about recruiting. And I'm like, that's not that hard. All you have to do is this and this. And they're like, okay, now you're going to be in recruiting. Now you're leading recruiting, and here we go. And so that was my career on the corporate side, was taking an HR job, getting pulled into recruiting, going to take another HR job, getting pulled into recruiting. Eventually mom called, had a health scare, and was like, I'm going to get rid of the company, sell it, or do you want to come back and run it? And I've been doing that ever since. So yeah. So like, just that's the professional side. I started actually writing and blogging in the space, when I was still in corporate HR, and that was always interesting. Started doing it with Chris Dunn at Fistful of Talent. He did HR Capitalist at the time. And that was it was early days of like HR blogging. There was like a handful of people that did it. And so I just thought it was more mental therapy to me of writing than anything else, and learned that I actually really liked writing. I never knew I was a writer, but then ended up really enjoying that.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely one of the people reading early on both of you guys' blogs and websites. I remember learning about like his take on a few things with labor relations and just how to approach things, and obviously your take. And it's funny the differences because you're like, I don't ever want to hear anything about FMLA, and just so after all these years, like, one hand you feel like you kind of know people after a while reading their content. The other hand, you're like, they're just professionals trying to get through the day like everyone else.
It's just yeah. I always say it with people too, is like people like freak out around like CEOs, especially if like a Fortune 500, like, oh my God, this is a Fortune 500 CEO of like, if you were to run into like a CEO of like really any company in the Fortune 500, like just randomly, pick one. At the end of the day, it's just a person that has a job. Like they're not any better or worse than you. They might make more money than you. But other than that, it's just another person. Like it's so crazy to me that people kind of lose their minds around some CEO because they're like, oh, this person makes, 10 million or $25 million. And you're like, yeah, maybe like, for whatever reason, then their career worked out for them. Right. They won the career lottery and you didn't. Who knows?
Jumping ahead a little bit, your book, The Talent Fix, I got a copy of it right here. The show. This is version 1.
Version 1. I got version 2.
Yes, and this book really it helped reframe my approach to TA, especially how we think about operational leadership and technology stacks. What was your goal with the original book? And I know there's a second version now. Is this book for those maybe junior in their career, seasoned professionals, or anyone in between with an interest in TA? And I guess what inspired you to take the leap to write a book and now a second version?
Yeah, the original version was written because like I'd started writing on the blog stuff. And what happens is like you start out and like the audience is pretty small and then it grows. And so I started getting all these questions. Like people would say, oh, I want like this. And what would you do here? And I'm like, gosh, like I should write a book and like kind of answer all these questions. And basically I wrote it as if I was going to come into your company and run talent acquisition, soup to nuts, whatever that saying is, like, here's what I would do. Literally from the interview, setting yourself up to success all the way to the end. So that's why I wrote it. Turns out like, people don't really want to read a book. They still just want just answer my dumb question. Don't sell me a book. Which is always funny. But like, because I had written so much on the blog too. Like, I think by the time I wrote the book, I know I had for sure over 1.5 million words written on the blog. The book itself is like 65,000 words, which is a normal kind of average business book, right? But like you gain credibility. Like all of a sudden now you're on bigger stages and I'm invited to speak all over the world just because I had a book. And I was like, I've been writing for like, by the time probably 8 years and had thousands of blog posts, and like, why just because it's in a book form now am I smarter? Like like we talked about, I was the exact same person, but now I had a book.
So a lot of stuff has changed from the early blog days to the book. Obviously in the middle, there was a global pandemic. And now technology, of course, AI and recruiting is a really big topic. Like every day, we probably get emails of someone that can fix our talent or HR strategy with AI. And then you realize you got the same email I got from the same vendor. And the only difference is Tim or Jay and the email.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
It's a can. And I get salespeople have to do their thing, and hats
Yeah.
off to them. So there's a lot of noise with AI and obviously in TA. And so from AI tools that can help the process easier, whether it's sourcing, interviewing, scheduling, finding those spots on calendars where you make yourself available to the software, background checks. Now, some are saying AI will replace recruiters. I personally don't think that, because there's a lot of risk involved in that. Others saying it'll enhance them, make their jobs more efficient. What is your take on this as someone who has seen a variety of tech stacks over the years and trends come and go in this space?
Yeah, I mean, I can build an AI tech stack today that would eliminate the need for a recruiter in your company. Like that's not the issue. The question's always going to be is what part of that recruiting activity, the tactical side, is kind of a non-value add to the organization, or not even a non-value add, because all of it's a value add. The question I would have is, where does the human add even more value if given the capacity? And so I think that's where this is really going. It's where does the human layer in and what pieces, and every company is going to have their own secret sauce that works for them. And there will be companies that go, you know what, for our hourly, low skill, no skill jobs, it's going to be completely AI driven and a human won't touch it. Cool, that's on you, right? There's going to be other companies that will go the other way and go, oh, we think our hourly hiring is so important to us, we're going to layer in even more human, and let people have, that contact. So it's all kind of a strategic thing that no one's figured out right now. If I take a look at what the AI tools that are out there would do, to me, there's 4 areas that really, I think, are probably make more sense. And when you think about sourcing, matching, screening, scheduling, AI will just do that better than a human for the most part. And so it's like, how do we then, let's say that's 75% of the job, then what do we do then with that extra capacity? And that's where I think if you sit down and start to brainstorm, there's so many cool things. Like we did the CEO survey last year, Jay, that we asked CEOs like, hey, do you hire top talent? Like 87% agree with it. Yeah. In reality, none of them had any idea how talent actually came into their company, right? Like, oh, we're told by HR that we hire top talent, when in reality, they just hired the best of who apply. And now, ironically, that maybe could be best talent, right? You got lucky and a top talented person actually applied to your job. But for the most part, you're just hiring the best of those available at the time, which could be the worst talent in the marketplace. And usually best talent doesn't necessarily apply because they're the best talent. They're already being wined and dined by other companies. And so our ability to go out and actually meet that expectation of hiring top talent, to go hunt for talent, to go build relationships with people that it might take 9 months, 6 months, a year before you go, oh my gosh, Tim, fine, I'll come interview with you. Like, you wore me down, right? It's like trying to get that, girl to go out with you. It's like, maybe she didn't say yes the first few times, but if you, were pursued, eventually she said yes. And then, you were able to kind of move forward in that relationship. So I think stuff like that. One of my sons just went through an interview process, and I tell people, you show up at the corporation and there's, somebody that's greeting people as they come in, and it's all very impersonal. It's like, who are you? Who are you here to see? And you're just like, oh, the name, it's Jay, what's the last name? I have to look it up, and no one's prepared for you. Right. And then they stick you in some conference room, and it's cold and it's bare, and you're just waiting for somebody to show up. And the whole thing, you're just like, oh, I made a mistake. Why am I here? This is a nightmare. And imagine that same scenario. You come in and it's like, oh, welcome, Tim Sackett to ABC Company. And then somebody in talent acquisition had sent for the attendant or the security people a picture of you, and goes like, oh my gosh, Tim, we've been waiting for you. We thought you'd be here, blah, blah, blah. And then they knew that I'm a diet Mountain Dew drinker. And they're like, I get into the conference room and there's one sitting there. My mentality of that interview completely went from this is awful to, holy crap, these people want me. Everything shifted because of 2 personal touches or 3 personal touches, that because I had capacity now to do those and think about that experience of the candidate, I now can elevate that experience, right? Where they go, holy crap, they want me. I feel wanted. Most of our interview process, we don't feel wanted. And again, that's just one brainstorm thing. I could come up with 1 million of those, of how we can make this experience 1,000 times better for the hiring manager, for everybody involved. Let's really try to figure this out. And we know right now, if I spent time with the candidate and coached them up on, hey, this is what our culture is. By the way, this is who this hiring manager is. This is what Jay thinks is important. This is who Jay is as a person. And this is why people love working for Jay, blah, blah, blah. Now, when that person shows up to interview, they're going to interview so much better. They're going to feel comfort with you. They're going to open up faster. And Jay's going to go, holy crap, that candidate was amazing. You guys keep finding amazing candidates. The candidate's going to go, I felt so comfortable. I really felt like I could put myself, and all of this came down to being able to coach, right? Can I spend time with, the candidate? Can I spend time with a hiring manager? Right now we can't. We're fighting fires. So I'm not afraid of AI taking tactical work away. Please take, my entire history of being in TA for the last 25 years has been automation taking away parts of the job. And so if you can take away more parts of this job so that I now can be creative and make it even, let's go. Like I'm ready for that. The problem is so many people aren't thinking that way. They're thinking about, I have this bucket of work and don't take any bucket of this work because this is my work. Instead of going, no, pour all that crap out and let me start putting more stuff in that I really want to do. That's going to add bigger value. That's the conversation we should be having.
Yeah, it seems like going from, like you said, tactical to really being more of that TA partner. There's HR business partners we know from a lot of different roles and companies, but a TA business partner is key, from my perspective, because
I just talked to a TA leader from an organization it's a global organization. So this person's sitting, I think it was like Amsterdam or Europe, someplace over there. And they took 50, so they layered in a bunch of AI, which allowed them to take 15 recruiters and embed them with hiring leaders as that talent advisor. So it wasn't just about, let me help you find talent. It was about, wait a minute, how do we develop the talent that's on your team? How do we make sure that we're building a strong culture? How do we make sure we retain people longer? It was all encompassing around talent. It was a true talent advisor. And the hiring managers were like, oh my God, this is amazing. Finally, for the first time in my career, I feel like I'm not on an island when it comes to interviewing and promoting and performance management, all of these things. And we think like, oh, well, that's an HR business partner. And you're like, no, but they still didn't act in that capacity either, right?
Yeah, and back to what you said about like there's the Mountain Dew waiting for you in a conference room during an interview, or someone is there to personally, greet you warmly. That was saw that at a previous organization, a sister team I was on. A TA leader mentioned that they were going to have each recruiter meet someone in the lobby. It's for a particular location. It was several locations around the country. And they're going to do this. They're going to be in the lobby. If their interview's at 10, they're going to be in the lobby at 9:50 to be there waiting for them. My first thought was, you're not? This is like relationship building 101, 102. And I get you get busy sourcing and taking calls, but.
Yeah. And I always think even like the simple things of the ghosting thing is still like a huge deal. Like I should be able to talk to my AI and say, hey, Jay's coming in on Monday. I want to make sure that I'm keeping text communication with him going until he shows up the day of, right? And it could be call to action stuff. It could just be, oh my gosh, I can't wait to meet you this morning. I'm going to be there. I'm going to pick you up in the lobby at 9. If anything happens, let me know, right? And I'll make sure we can reschedule, cancel, whatever. It's like simple stuff like that. Like, why aren't we, but again, we do it now and go, oh my gosh, like I do not have the capacity to do that. And you're like, yeah, but technology does,
Right. Looking at the different tech stack strategies, you've often talked about tech stack bloat. I agree with you 100%. What's your ideal TA tech stack in 2025 and going forward?
Wow, that's it's a difficult conversation because I think everybody has, again, the tech stack that will work for them. Now, could we come up with, hey, here's like 2 or 3 really good ones based on your industry size, blah, 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 what you're hiring for in your mix, for sure. We take a look at the average tech stack of a Fortune 1000 and it's upwards of 20 pieces of technology, and so I think everyone's trying now to say, oh no, we're an all-in-one platform, right? And all is an all-in-one platform is somebody else took a bunch of stuff and like pieced it together for you. It's still, if you dig in there, there's still probably 12 to 15 pieces of technology. So, is that the right thing for you? And most people if you have an ATS now, most of the ATSs have multiple pieces of technology built in, right? There's scheduling and there's interviews and technology in there, and there's assessment and matching and all of this stuff. All of those things can be purchased separately, right, as well. So it's like, for me, it's really figuring out where are the pain points? What do you need? I have this idea that I think in the future, like most companies, if you were to ask any like CHRO or like head of TA, like what do they really want in terms of recruiting? It was like, well, when I have an opening, I want to turn on a machine and that machine spits out really good candidates to me that I can then interview. And then when I fill it, I want to turn the machine off. And then I want to turn the machine on when I have another opening. And like, I don't want this constant on machine, even though we have this weird kind of employment branding, recruitment marketing piece where you go, well, if you're a company that has to hire every week, every month, every year, you kind of want your brand out there. So you need some of the machine to be on all the time. I don't need to be spending money on Indeed or LinkedIn or blah, blah, blah. So I do believe like with AI, we're going to have this ability to go, hey, how do we hey, I have an opening, right? I need to go hire an accountant, or I need to hire an engineer. Turn the machine on, the machine spits out something. So the kind of this just in time, kind of framework. And I think we're getting closer to that. And I think ultimately that's all people want. Like do they really want to go and have 100 recruiters constantly building relationships with people, blah, blah, blah? No, but if your strategy is to have noticeably better talent or have top talent, or, that's a competitive advantage for you, maybe you have a certain group that does that for you while you still have this machine to go, hey, for 20% of our positions, it's critical that we have the best talent. For these other 80%, turn the machine on, turn the machine off, turn the machine on, turn the machine off, and flip it like a switch. And I think if we could do that and build that, I think most people would rather have that stack. They don't care. It's like most of us don't care we don't even want to know how the sausage is made, right? I love the taste of a sausage. Boy, don't take me through that manufacturing process. That's gross. And I think most people feel that way about recruiting. They don't want to know how I got the candidate to you. They just want me to get the candidate to you. So I don't need to know all 15 pieces of technology that it took me to develop and bring you this candidate in a really nice way.
And looking in the TA and HR spaces, I know you've advised or invested in companies from HR Tech Fund, HR Tech 100 Fund as a rewards. What draws you to a company, and are there any emerging platforms or trends you're especially excited about right now?
Yeah, I mean, my latest investment was with a company called A Priora, which does AI screening. And the whole concept for me, now I don't think this is their go-to-market, but it's my go-to-market is if you think about a position we have open right now, and let's say you have 100 people apply to a job, a recruiter is going to go, they're going to look at these 100 applications. They're not going to look at all 100. They're going to go through the first 20, maybe 25. They're going to cherry pick out the best ones. They're going to send them an email. They're going to maybe screen them, maybe send them an assessment. And then the 3 or 4 or 5 best of those are going to send on to hiring managers. Literally 75 to 80% of the people that applied to your job never even got into the process at all. They applied to the job and that was it. And so this is that black hole concept. Now, if I layered in AI and said, hey, I believe 100% of people should actually be into the process. So I'm going to have AI screen you, and it's going to get in there, and it gets in there way deeper than you think. To me, AI screening is already better than that above average recruiter. It doesn't, here's an example. If I am using an AI screener, if I go to a recruiter first, a real human recruiter, and they go, Tim, tell me about, looks like you were an engineer working with AI at General Motors. Tell me about that. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, for the last 8 years, I actually led an engineering project that was all about autonomous driving using AI within General Motors. They would say, oh my gosh, that's great. And then they would move on to the next question. AI would go, no, specifically, what within that project did you do? What components were you, what did you use to get there and build this and blah, blah, blah. And it digs. It doesn't take my surface answer as an answer. And so we find that it's actually really, really good at screening, because to them, there's no uncomfortable question to ask. It's going to ask the question that says, well, wait a minute, you didn't really answer that. I need a real answer, right? And it's going to keep digging. So, and then from there, you could say, okay, cool. Based on the 100 screens of those, every applicant got a chance, right? Got an at bat. Now we're going to do an assessment. Maybe it's a cultural assessment. Maybe it's a technical assessment, whatever. And then now my recruiters have all this data. They can go, oh, so I want to prioritize these ones first, and then these ones, then these ones. And I'm going to do a full cultural screen. I'm going to tell, why do you want to come work here? Why do you want to work for Jay? And here's how Jay is. And do you guys think you would be able to mesh together and blah, blah, blah. And the companies that are starting to do this, the hiring manager feedback and the candidate, everything in Rawl is it's moving faster and the quality is better, because now you have 100% of people getting into that process versus maybe 10, 20%. And then even at the end, you're lucky if you get 3% that actually get an interview based on that first 20 that got even a sniff. And so it's more inclusive. You're going to have a higher quality. You're going to probably move faster overall. And the hiring managers are going to be more satisfied with the people you're bringing them. So it's to me, it's a win-win-win. And by the way, it's actually really inexpensive. I mean, you can do AI screens, at volume for pennies on the dollar. You're talking maybe 50, 75 cents at low volume even. If I'm an SMB with 100 employees, I could probably still do AI screening at $1.50, $2 per. Like it's so inexpensive. It's ridiculous of why we don't say, hey, I don't care. Even, well, Tim, like this person applied to the job and, it's a software engineer job and they're a barista with no education. Like, why would we ever even do that? Who knows? Maybe they spend every waking hour not being a barista, being a software engineer at home in their basement. Like, you don't, like, let's dig in and find out. Who knows, right? Who cares? Or maybe they just applied to a job because they were desperate or they used AI. But when the AI screened them, they found out that they were super customer focused and you have a customer service job that we can then retarget them for. Like you don't know until you actually let people in. What people are telling you by applying is, hey, I want to come work for you. And that signal alone is a really good indicator if that person's actually going to be successful with your company. Like, so it's like we misdiagnose in my mind the signal of having people wanting to come work for us.
Yeah, and you touched on a really good point there. You said it helps with the quality of candidates. And we all know there's metrics in TA. And there's some metrics that you've written about and said, what is the one metric if you're going to measure? Is it time to fill, time to close?
Should be fired immediately, right?
And we know quality of hire is everything.
Quality of hire is everything, except no one measures it. Like, oh, it's so important to us. How do you measure it? We don't. Like, what? Like, why is it so important?
So it's good to have KPIs for certain things. And it's like, yes, if you get a requisition, you shouldn't be sitting on it for, 15 days. Having that quality of hire is definitely key. And other areas related to this is with, evolving hiring laws, being on the front line in TA with yourself, your team, and the industry. We're seeing AI bias laws come into play. There's obviously been pay transparency laws popping up all over the U.S. in several states and cities. There's a lot of ban the box laws in certain states or cities. How should TA leaders, stay compliant and competitive with, new regulations and laws coming out at pretty rapid pace?
Yeah, like I've been doing this hiring thing a long time and I've never had one law hinder me from going out and being really aggressive in terms of finding the best people. And I think that's where sometimes we get caught up in terms of being compliant. We think that somehow is a roadblock for us to go out and hire the best people. And like, I've been lucky enough to know like the former head of the EEOC and the current, number 2 at the DOL. When you sit and talk with those kinds of people, never once are they saying, hey, we want to try to hinder companies from hiring, right? We might want you to open your aperture. We might want you to open your top of funnel and make sure you're not being biased around your hiring. But we still want you to go out and hire. Like they're still pro hiring. And so it's like, okay, so if I'm doing the right thing or trying to do the right thing, for the most part, I would say 99% of the time, you're going to be fine. Now you might be trying to do the right thing and somehow in your process, you did the wrong thing. But if you're trying to do the right thing, it's going to come out in any kind of audit or whatever you do. Right. And I think for me, the funny part of this is I've worked with a couple of some of the most talented like AI people in our business and also AI professors, and researchers. And here's what we know from the data. Anytime you add human into a process, you increase bias. Anytime you add AI into a process, you decrease bias. The reality, but when we talk to like HR leaders or TA leaders, they tend to believe the exact opposite. They believe AI is more biased. They believe this because we can actually measure the bias of AI. We can audit it, we can measure it, we can control for it. I can't do that for Mark, the hiring manager, right? I have no idea what Mark's biases are, even though I do know. I'm like, I know Mark hates women. He's been through 4 divorces and he treats every admin like crap, blah, blah, blah. And you're just like, but yet we just ignore that and we continue to let Mark to hire. I can take a look at Mark's hiring funnel and go, hey, for every position we post, it's 50-50 male, female, and yet you hire 70% males for your job. Like I know you're biased, but yet we don't do anything about Mark. But I'm more concerned about my AI that I by the minute go, is this being biased? I could actually control the AI and say, hey, if we have a funnel that's 50-50 male, female, I want to make sure when we hire, it's also male, female. And if something happens that goes beyond that, I want you to red flag it and bring it, and before you let it move forward, or within the assessment process or within the interview process, whenever that starts to fall out of equalization, let's dig into this. And so again, I'm hopeful that AI, to me, I think the closest we become to bias-free hiring is by having AI do the entire thing. Now, is that really what we're going to end up with? No, I don't think so. My God, honest belief is that that's the closest we'll become. So we know we're going to add in human. So we know we're going to increase bias. So let's control for that. And let's really start like digging into some of the data around that. We don't have those conversations now. We just want to complain about AI.
And looking at the different platforms out there, you and I know there's a million platforms as far as, ATSs and tech stacks you can use. So if you or someone were stepping into a director of TA ops role tomorrow, what are your first 90 days focused on?
I'm probably going to literally spend time with the people that utilize HR and TA the most. I'm going to be out there with hiring managers. I'm going to be out there with operations, finding out where our biggest pain points are. And then I'm going to go after those. And it doesn't matter what I'm doing in TA or HR. Let's say hey, our biggest pain point is we're in this death spiral around revenue. Okay, I need to figure out then how do we help this? Is it performance management? Is it tenure? Is it better hiring? How can I have an impact on creating more revenue for the company? And that's the only focus that you have, is really working those pain points, because what you're building is credibility in that first 90 days and understanding of the business. Before I change any process, any technology, any people, I got to figure that out. And what I find is that usually the technology can be improved. Sure, it always can be improved. Can the process be improved? Sure, it can always be improved. What I find is usually is performance management related, is that we have people aren't being held accountable to the job that they're being paid to do. Almost 100% of the time when I come in and work with a company, that's usually the thing. And if I'm working with the C-suite, if I'm working with the CEO, CFO, COO, almost 100% of the time, that's the conversation they want to have, is around performance management, and that we don't do a really good job around this. And by the way, that's every company, because as humans, we're conflict avoidant by nature. And if somebody is non-conflict avoidant, if they love conflict, probably they have a mental issue, right? Like, why do you want to argue with everybody, right? That's not necessarily healthy either. And so there's a part of this where there's a human nature that we're all going to be conflict avoidant to a certain level. But if it's to the level where it's hurting the company's performance, this is where we have to change it, right? And so I tend to dig into that kind of stuff in that first 90 days from there, and really want to know what's going on from that standpoint. And then I'm going to really dig into the performance management of my own team. I need to know who's performing, who's not performing from that standpoint.
Tim, whether you realize it or not, you've mentored and inspired a lot of us. What's the one piece of advice you always return to for career growth in TA?
Pick up the damn phone. It's the first thing that ever happened to me in recruiting. Is I spent weeks just making phone calls to candidates and without even knowing what I was doing. That was the entire job, was to get me over my fear of picking up the phone. And what I see, especially with Gen Z recruiters coming in, is they think they can email and text their way out of recruiting. And you can, to a certain extent. I think you can get to average by being masterful at email and text. At some point, though, you have to be able to pick up the phone and have really good conversation, because there's very few jobs in the world somebody will accept the job without talking to a real person, without engaging with a real person, without feeling comfortable with a real person. And so you have to have this. And here's my instance, because we tend to hire a lot of new to recruiting professionals. They don't have to be entry level professionals, because sometimes they come from other professions, but they're new to recruiting. And anytime one of them is struggling, we will put them on a plan. And basically the plan is just, we're going to increase the number of outgoing calls by 25% on a weekly basis. And within a month, magically, they're above average again. And so that alone, and I try to tell people, is if you do anything in recruiting, is start measuring how many outgoing calls are being made. If you want to increase, find your baseline and then just start ratcheting that up little by little. And you'll be, all of a sudden, magically, you're going to find more candidates. The hiring managers are going to be more satisfied. Everything just falls into place, and everybody wants to push back on it. And they want to push back on it simply because nobody's comfortable picking up the phone anymore and having a conversation. I tell people all the time, if the only way my kids survived was to pick up the phone to dial to get a pizza, they would starve. If they can't do it through an app, that's not happening. They're not going to go and, call somebody and order a pizza. Oh my God, Dad. Come on.
I think my brother and I knew Domino's pizza by heart when we were growing up, because we ordered it so much from, a block or two away. And even said, is this Jay?
Oh, when I was in college, you could get a $3.99 large Domino's pepperoni pizza. That was basically my go-to meal, probably 4 out of 7 nights a week. That was it,
It's just funny that, you pick up the phone, and I've heard that from leaders within the workplace, obviously, personal and other parts of professional life. It's like you can resolve so much just picking up the phone, calling that vendor, maybe, in the workplace, or, your cable bill or internet bill went up 20%. You don't understand why. Just pick up the phone instead of dealing it through chat. You might have it resolved in 15 minutes. I have to go through a phone tree. It's kind of just getting back to basics. Like, we love email. People are on social media, but once in a while you get a card for a birthday from a family member, or anniversary, Christmas, and something so simple, and it cuts through the noise. That makes your day. You get a card in the mail, and maybe it's a generational thing still, but who knows?
I do a lot of like corporate like speaking stuff, and so there's like a lot of like pieces to that like talk that I love to give. One of them is, especially for like new hiring managers, one of the things I love to do is like when you hire somebody and you have to know a little bit about them, right? Because it could go sideways on this as well. But if you know the person you hired has like this great relationship with their mom or their dad or both or whatever, right? Or maybe they have a new spouse or something, like, is to send them a handwritten note and just thank them, like within like, hey, I want to thank you. Like, I'm Jay's, new boss, and like, he's just amazing to work with. And I know that he has to give up a lot and you're sharing him with us. And I just appreciate that. You think like, oh my gosh, you think that that's for the person. It's not, it's for the worker, because they're going to come home. They're like, oh my gosh, like this person says these great things about you and blah, blah, blah. And like, it's such an easy thing to do, and it ramps it up. And I actually got that I had my mother come visit me. I was leading TA for a large health system, and she just happened to be in town. And so she actually met me at my office, and we were going to go have lunch in the cafeteria, right in the hospital cafeteria. And was walking down the hall, and the CHRO happened to be walking the other way. And I introduced them, and he took time, grabbed her hand, and just said, I want to thank you because like Tim's been so great, blah, blah, blah. And like, it just had this impact because she was glowing the rest of the day. She thought that was the greatest thing that ever happened, that this executive would take time to just thank her for producing such a great child, right? And human and blah, blah, blah. And it just seems so light and easy. And it has such huge impact to us,
Yeah, it does. Again, back to basics, and putting that human and human resources is one of the things.
I think all the people that are upset about going like the return to office thing, like Jay, like you and I know the power of like, I'm in my office and can I send an email to the person that's 50 feet down or 100 yards across on the other side of the building, blah, blah, blah. Sure. Or I could walk over there, see them face to face and have no lost communication that takes place. Like, hey, I'm going to send you this. And you're like, in your mind, you might be going, is Tim upset at me? Is he happy with like, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, I'm just going to show him and go, hey, by the way, did you get my, it's like, blah, blah, and they're like, oh yeah, I did. And here's like, and then you're like, cool. And then you just walk back to your office and you're like, everything was calm. Like we didn't have any blow up happen because someone misinterpreted and, Tim sent me this email. What do you think of this? Like, no, we don't need any of that.
It's almost like you're saying emails and texts can be misinterpreted. I've never seen such a thing.
I know, right? It's like, oh my gosh, here's the best example is my kids. Like if I sent okay, in their mind, they think that something's wrong. If I send just K, they think, okay, that's fine. If I said KK, then I'm happy about that. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And if I did AY, okay, the word, then I'm pissed off for sure. And I'm just like, you guys make zero sense. All four of those things. By the way, KK means nothing. Like, why is that positive all of a sudden, right? So now every time like I say something around them or about them or we're texting, I just respond with KK because I think it's stupid. And they think it's like, Dad, stop with the KK.
What's one unpopular opinion about recruiting you stand by no matter what?
What's one popular opinion?
Unpopular opinion.
Unpopular opinion about recruiting that we hire people.
That's a good one.
Unless I'm hiring somebody from my own team, I've never hired anybody in TA. I'm a conduit for a lot of hiring managers to hire people. They actually do the hiring, right? I've never once made a decision for another hiring manager. I've been a partner with hiring managers and helping them make a decision, but I've never once actually hired somebody for them. They've had to make that own decision. They had to live with it, right? And if we didn't have a TA team, they still owned the talent on their team. And so it frustrates me to get into a boardroom and usually it's a higher level, like director, VP, executive going, well, I can't do my job because TA won't hire people or won't find me people. And I'm like, that's not, our job is to actually like find people for you to hire, but it's your job to own the talent on your team. And so if I'm not doing my job, then you have to step in and still do that job. And so often, like is that an unpopular opinion? That's just an opinion. I don't know if it's unpopular. I think people love to wear that as a badge, right? Like, oh, you hire, like, oh, you're in TA, so you do the hiring. Like, no, no, we don't. We don't hire anybody.
Well, it leads to two things. It leads to back what we initially talked about, is quality of hire, because they own the position and you're supporting the position as a partner. And the one big tagline you have in your LinkedIn, not a life coach.
Not a life coach. I think the unpopular one would be that TA ghosts candidates. And the reality of that is much less sinister than how it sounds. Because there's no recruiter I know that purposely ghost a candidate, right? What we have is a lot of candidates applying for jobs that, again, a recruiter never sees based on the technology. It's usually first in, first out, So, they're just going through and looking at, a number of candidates. They're pulling a few and then they're moving on. The vast majority never even get looked at. So they didn't ghost you. They never even saw you. And yet you feel ghosted, right? The thing I hate is here's the other piece of it is like, when recruiters screen a candidate, candidates actually believe that's an interview. So they're like, oh my gosh, I just had this great interview with ABC company. It was amazing. The recruiter said I was perfect and blah, blah, blah. And then they ghosted me. They didn't say anything. Well, no, they just screened you. They sent you on to a hiring manager who didn't choose you to go to the next level. Now, should that recruiter tell you, hey, by the way, hiring manager got back to me, you're no longer it? Yeah, but here's also what happens is the hiring manager will interview 3 people and then go, I didn't like those 3. I'm going to go back to the original ones you sent me. Now I want to talk to these ones, right? And so we tend to like wait and do stuff like that. So like there's a lot of process technology things that candidates have just said, oh, I'm ghosted by this company. And you're like, no, you're not. That's just not what happens from that standpoint. The real ghosting happens is when a candidate sets up an interview and is supposed to be there Monday at noon and they don't show. That's a ghost, right? Like, why did you do that? I think there should be like a list, like awfulpeople.com, for when candidates don't show for interviews, that we could just put their name and their LinkedIn profile and their phone number. We put all this stuff in there and said, hey, Jay never showed for an interview Monday at noon at this company, this date, this position, and never told us why. And there you go. Here's a big industry blacklist of all these terrible people that actually ghost us.
Well, I like to jump into what I call the encore section, where, like I mentioned before, we keep the human and human resources and ask some personal and fun pop culture questions. If you were to share a Spotify or Apple Music playlist, what are some of the artists we'd find?
Oh gosh, right now, I would say over the last 3 years, I've been on this country kick. So Luke Combs, Morgan Wallen, Lainey Wilson, like all of these people on the countryside. Traditionally, I'm a hip hop person. So it's like, Kendrick Lamar and like Eminem and like any, Big Sean, like a lot of like rap and, in hip hop, which I think people would find fascinating. I also love musicals. So I have like a really wide genre of musical taste, but I love all kinds of music.
That's awesome. What was the last show, concert, play, event, even sporting event you attended?
I went to Just in Time. Jonathan Groff, who actually played the original King in Hamilton, starred doing Bobby Darin. It's basically a Bobby Darin concert kind of life story thing. It was amazing. Like it was one of the most, I'm a huge Hamilton fan. So like, this, I would say, gosh, if everything I've seen, it has to be in the top 3 or 4 of shows I've seen. He was amazing. I think it's to see Broadway level talent, to be able to be on a stage like that for 3 straight hours and just kill it, like, is amazing to me.
And what is a guilty pleasure of yours, whether it's a food, TV show, whatever comes to mind? Anything?
Yeah. Guilty pleasure. So I mean, one is like, you already know, is like I'm a caffeine junkie, but not coffee. I don't like coffee, but I'll do Diet Mountain Dew. I'll do Monsters. I'll do Celsius's. If I could get straight caffeine directed into my veins, like I would do that. To me, that would just be a better pleasure. The other one is, is it PBS that has the Antique Roadshow? I love watching Antique Roadshow. My wife is like, she can't stand it. She's like, this is the dumbest thing ever, because I love the history and love the stories of things. And I love to believe that somehow, like, my grandmother's going to pass. I'm going to go in her closet and find some vase and they're going to go, oh my gosh, this was from the Ming Dynasty, blah, blah, blah. It's worth $10 million. I just love the story. Like I love history of things. So like I'm always been fascinated by history.
And is there like what is a fun or unique fact that many people may not know about you?
Fun or unique fact? That's a good one. I think like you had mentioned on the top, like I've written so much, and then you feel like you know that person, and there's very little that I don't. I think I always talk about my wife being a Hall of Fame wife. And that's because she's actually in the she played volleyball at Wyoming, and she's in the sport Hall of Fame for Wyoming because she was an amazing volleyball player. And so like, I think people are always kind of surprised that I'm married to a volleyball player because they instantly think, well, Tim, you're short. Like, so you have this 6'2" like wife. And I'm like, no, she was a setter. She's my size. It is interesting too, because like you had like, she always teases me and says I'm a micro celebrity. She's like, there's like 13 like HR people in the world that kind of want your picture. And, when you go to Sherm or whatever, you feel like this kind of rock star. But she was growing, like when we met, like she was the one, like she was this college athlete and, they were nationally ranked and she was, all this and all that. And, she would have all these little girls waiting to sign autographs after she played. And so like we just kind of, that's how I met her. She was the famous one, and then, roles had kind of switched over the years. We actually were in New York, I was saying this weekend, and there's a bagel place called Pop Up Bagels. And their tagline was known but not famous. And she's like, I'm going to get you that sweatshirt. You're known but not famous.
That's funny. And then last question, what is the last show you binge watched, on Netflix, HBO, many of those streaming platforms that it's your go-to show?
Yeah, it was interesting because I think is it Netflix? It's called Sirens. I mean, it's like a 5-episode, really short one. And my son was telling us about it. And I'm like, no, we saw it. And then he told us the ending. And we were like, oh, we didn't see that. We had seen the first episode and then forgot to go back to it. And so we actually binged it in New York, like after we got back. So we were up till like 2 a.m, like watching this stupid 5-series show. But we actually watched the first 2. We didn't see the last 3. So we binged the last 3.
Nice. I'll have to check that one out. So Tim, where can people, if they have any questions, where they want to get in touch with you about, TA strategy, corporate speaking, just want to reach out and say hello, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can, timsackett.com. If you Google Tim Sackett, I think I'm the first couple hundred pages. So it's like I have enough SEO that I'm like, it shows up pretty well. So you'll be able to find me pretty easy.
That's awesome. Tim, thank you for not just joining us today, but for setting the bar and what it means to lead with clarity and conviction in TA. For listeners, be sure to follow Tim on LinkedIn. Check out his blog and website at timsackett.com. Be sure to listen to the HR Famous podcast. If you found value in the show, please be sure to like and subscribe and keep rocking HR excellence.